It was supposed to be just another Tuesday morning flight from Chicago to New York, a routine shuttle through the clouds. But when Captain Alistair McGregor spotted one name on his passenger manifesta, 17-year-old girl, he made a decision that would destroy everything he'd built in 34 years of flying. He thought he was untouchable, a king in his cockpit kingdom. He was wrong. Captain Alistair McGregor lived for order, the satisfying snap of checklist binders, the predictable hum of engines coming to life, the neat lines of passengers filing into his aircraft, their faces a comfortable blur of anonymity. At 58, with distinguished silver hair and steel blue eyes that missed nothing, McGregor commanded respect. He was Aurajet's star pilot, featured in their in-flight magazine, a veteran who'd weathered every storm the aviation industry could throw at him. In his mind, he was invincible. Aurajet Flight 818 was routine. Chicago O'Hare to New York LaGuardia, full flight, business as usual. As First Officer David Chen ran pre-flight checks, McGregor scanned the passenger manifest with practiced efficiency. His eyes stopped cold. Asterisk seat 14B. Williams, Zora, age 17. Asterisk through the cockpit window. He spotted her in the boarding queue, a slim teenager with intricate braids, clutching a book, wearing simple jeans and a university sweatshirt. She looked calm, intelligent. She was black. Something dark and poisonous stirred in McGregor's chest, a prejudice he'd nursed for decades. Born from a failed business partnership he'd twisted in his memory into a grand betrayal rather than facing his own mistakes. He didn't see a teenager traveling to visit family. He saw a threat. David McGregor's voice cut through the cockpit's hum. See that girl in the red sweatshirt? Zone 3 line. David Chen squinted through the window. The kid with the book? What about her? I don't like her demeanor. Something's off. McGregor's words were carefully chosen, poison wrapped in professional caution. I'm flagging her as a security concern. David stared, bewildered. Captain, she's 17. She looks like she's heading to college. Timothy McVeigh looked like a soldier. McGregor shot back with chilling certainty. Age is irrelevant. I won't have her on my plane. The finality in his tone was absolute. David had seen this side of McGregor before the snide remarks. The dismissive attitudes toward anyone who didn't fit his narrow worldview. To challenge him now would be career suicide, with a young family and mortgage to consider. David fell silent. McGregor strode from the cockpit to address Maria Flores, the lead flight attendant. Maria, the passenger, in 14 bytes or Williams. Remove her from the flight. Maria's practiced smile faltered. Removed. Is there a problem with her ticket? She presents a security risk. I want her and her baggage off this plane now. He didn't wait for questions, returning to his cockpit kingdom with mechanical precision. Minutes later, Zora Williams stepped onto the aircraft, smiling politely at the crew. She found her middle seat, stowed her backpack, and opened her book, a collection of James Baldwin essays. She'd barely settled when Maria appeared beside her, face pale, accompanied by a burly ground supervisor. Miss Williams, I'm afraid I need to ask you to come with me. The businessman in 14A huffed with annoyance. The mother in 14C pulled her toddler closer, heads turned. The cabin's murmur shifted to something ugly suspicion. Is something wrong? Zora asked, her voice steady despite the knot forming in her stomach. The captain has made a decision, the supervisor stated mechanically. Please collect your belongings and deplane security risk. The words hung in the recycled air like a poison cloud. Zora felt humiliation creep up her neck. Every eye in the cabin was on her. Suspicion, fear, morbid curiosity, replacing human recognition. She wasn't a girl with a book anymore. She was a threat, as decreed by the unseen monarch in the cockpit, with quiet dignity that belied her 17 years. She gathered her belongings and walked the gauntlet of stairs to the aircraft door, standing on the jet bridge. Watching the door seal shut on Aurajet 818, Zora pulled out her phone. The humiliation burned, but beneath it, something else was crystallizing, a cold, sharp clarity. She scrolled to one contact. Mom? Hey sweetie, you should be in the air by now. Everything okay? I'm fine, Mom, but there's been an issue with the flight. Zora's voice was unnaturally steady, the tone of someone who'd been deeply wronged and was processing it with chilling maturity. What kind of issue? I was removed from the plane. Aurajet Flight 818. The captain deemed me a security risk. The silence that followed was heavy with understanding. In that single phrase, Evelyn Reed grasped everything, the vagueness, the public humiliation, the fact that her brilliant daughter could be labeled such a thing. Zora, are you somewhere safe right now? I'm on the jet bridge. I can see the cockpit. There's a man in the pilot's seat holder with white hair. He's watching me. Evelyn's eyes narrowed. She was seeing a now, not a crisis. Listen carefully. Go to the nearest Aurajet customer service desk. Tell them you need to be rebooked. Don't mention what happened. Just say you missed the flight. Then go to the Admiral's Club. Wait for my call. Okay, Mom, I love you. I'm going to handle this, I know. Evelyn Reed was no ordinary mother. At 48, she was lead counsel for the Orion Group, a massive investment consortium with controlling stakes in aircraft manufacturers, regional airlines, and everything in between. Her name was whispered with equal parts fear and reverence in aviation boardrooms worldwide. When she hung up, she sat motionless for 10 seconds. The fury building within her was nuclear, not the kind that results in shouting, but the kind that results in complete annihilation. Her fingers flew across the keyboard. Orajet, a mid-sized carrier with aggressive cost-cutting and a CEO perpetually punching above his weight class? The Orion Group didn't have direct stakes in Orajet, which made them vulnerable. But Orion controlled 70% of Orajet's Airbus fleet through Airline Global, and they controlled Pantheon Risk Management. Torres, head's primary insurance underwriter. Evelyn knew exactly where every pressure point was. Her first call was to Marcus Thorne, head of global operations for Airline Global. Marcus, I need you to issue an immediate recall notice for all Orajet assets. Emergency safety inspections of fuselage locking mechanisms, effective immediately. Evelyn, what the hell? A fleet-wide recall would ground their entire operation. That's hundreds of millions in losses per day. One of their pilots just endangered my daughter. This is not a negotiation, Marcus. This is a directive from your board's largest representative. Do it now. She hung up before he could argue. Her second call was shorter. Eleanor, it's Evelyn Reed. I'm invoking Section 7B of the Orajet policy on foreseen operational risks posed by personnel. I want their coverage suspended pending review of their pilot vetting protocols. Suspended. No airline can operate without coverage. The FAA would ground them instantly. Precisely. Consider them suspended as of 10 minutes ago. On board Orajet 818, Captain McGregor was feeling smug. The disruption had been removed. His orderly kingdom was secure. The engines began to spool up. All clear for pushback. David Chen reported. Excellent, McGregor replied, leaning back in satisfaction. Then the radio crackled. Orajet 818, hold your position. Do not push back. We have a ground stop on all Orajet traffic nationwide. McGregor grabbed his radio. Tower, this is Orajet 818. What's the holdup? All Orajet flights are grounded. No takeoffs, no landings. Airborne flights are being diverted. Hold your position. David stared at McGregor, eyes wide. A nationwide ground stop. What could cause that? McGregor's mind raced. It couldn't be related to the girl. Impossible. But as minutes ticked by, and his phone buzzed with frantic messages from grounded pilots across the country, a cold seed of doubt began to sprout. He had kicked a girl off a plane. 10 minutes later, the entire airline was brought to its knees. The chaos erupted nationwide. Every Orajet flight blinked from on time to cancelled in stark red letters. Gate agents faced rising tides of fury. Passengers swarmed customer service counters. Orajet headquarters in Atlanta, CEO Richard Sterling was apoplectic. What in God's name is happening? We're getting conflicting reports, the coup stammered. Airline Global issued a mandatory recall on our entire Airbus fleet. Pantheon suspended our insurance coverage. That's impossible. A lease recall and insurance suspension within minutes of each other. This is a coordinated attack. No one had answers. The machine had been stopped, but they couldn't see the hand that pulled the lever. Back at O'Hare, McGregor was summoned from his cockpit by John Carmichael, Orajet's chief of operations. What's going on, John? McGregor asked, trying to maintain his authoritative tone. Carmichael's expression was granite. Corporate asked for a report of any operational irregularities in the last hour. So I told them about my senior captain who refused to fly with a 17-year-old girl on board. McGregor's face went pale. I removed a security threat. That's my prerogative, as pilot in command. Don't feed me that line. I pulled her file. Zora Williams, an honor roll student, heading to a youth leadership conference. The only thing threatening about her is your prejudiced worldview. Carmichael held up his phone. We've been trying to find the source of this financial attack. One name keeps coming up. Evelyn Reed, lead counsel for the Orion Group, the firm that owns both Airline Global and Pantheon Risk Management. He read from his screen with the finality of a death sentence. The matter concerns the unprofessional and discriminatory treatment of my daughter, Zora Williams, by one of your pilots. The world tilted under McGregor's feet. The quiet girl with the book, her mother, was Evelyn Reed. He hadn't just kicked a passenger off his plane. He'd publicly humiliated the daughter of one of the most powerful figures in global aviation. Security risk had been real, but it hadn't come from the girl. It had come from him. The grounding of Orajet became a national news story. Financial networks ran frantic segments about the airline's imminent bankruptcy. Cable news framed it as corporate malfeasance and civil rights violations. Evelyn Reed's silence was more powerful than any press release. It was the silence of someone holding all the cards. Orajet hired former federal prosecutor Julian Croft to lead an internal investigation. Their survival depended on it. The investigation began with Captain McGregor. Gone was the crisp uniform. He sat in a rumpled suit, his arrogance replaced by defensive desperation. Walk me through your threat assessment. Croft began neutrally. It was based on 34 years of experience. Her demeanor was unsettling. She seemed nervous, agitated. We've reviewed the CCTV footage. She appears to be reading a book, looking up occasionally as people in queues do. Is this the agitated demeanor you're referring to? McGregor stared at the screen, showing a studious, patient teenager. The camera doesn't show everything. The feeling, the intuition. Has your intuition led you to remove other passengers? On occasion, it's rare. We're pulling the flight logs for your entire career. We want to see if there's a pattern. There was. A Middle Eastern man he'd claimed was sweating too profusely. A Sikh man whose turban was a potential concealment device. A group of young black men speaking Spanish had been removed for being unruly. The investigation expanded. Croft's team interviewed other pilots, flight attendants, and ground crew. They established a confidential tip line. The calls poured in. What emerged was a portrait of a toxic culture where bigotry was dismissed as old-school thinking. Maria Flores gave tearful testimony. Did I think Captain McGregor was racist? Yes, we all knew it. The things he'd say, the jokes, the comments, but complaining about him was career suicide. The most damning evidence came from an unexpected source, a retired mechanic named Frank. 5 years ago, we had an A321 with a recurring landing gear sensor issue. The protocol was clear if the fault light came on during pre-flight, youth a plane. Captain McGregor was desperate to get home for his daughter's birthday. The light came on. I told him he was grounded. He went ballistic. Frank's voice carried years of guilt. 10 minutes later, the light was off. He claimed it was a fluke and signed the logbook, but he must have accessed the maintenance override panel, something pilots aren't supposed to have access to. He flew 180 people on a potentially unsafe aircraft. This was the bombshell, not just prejudice, criminal negligence. Falsifying federal documents, knowingly flying an aircraft with potential safety defects. When confronted with this evidence, McGregor's denials crumbled into pathetic silence. The formal hearing was swift and brutal. The FAA permanently revoked McGregor's pilot's license. The NTSB recommended federal charges. Orajet terminated him for cause, voiding his pension and stock options. In one afternoon, Alistair McGregor was stripped of his profession, his savings, his reputation, and his freedom. But the karma was deeply personal. The loss of his pension was catastrophic. He and his wife Clara had lived comfortably, but their finances depended on that pension. Their daughter Jessica was in her 3rd year of medical school. At Johns Hopkins, tuition paid from his now vanished salary. The for sale sign went up on their manicured lawn. They sold everything at a loss. Moving to a cramped apartment, Clara, who hadn't worked in 30 years, struggled to find employment. The shame was crushing. McGregor couldn't face neighbors, friends, and former colleagues. He was a pariah. Evening, watching Jessica on a video call, he saw the strain in her eyes. It's okay, Dad, she said, forcing a smile. I can take out more loans, maybe take a year off to work. The words take a year off hit him like a physical blow. His brilliant daughter might have to abandon her dream because of his monstrous pride. Driven by desperation and warped desire for absolution, McGregor tracked down Zora at her Chicago hotel. When he saw her walking toward the elevators, he approached Mr. Williams. She recognized him immediately, though he looked a decade older. Fear jolted through her. Captain McGregor, I needed to speak with you, he stammered. What happened? My life's been destroyed. My house, my job, my pension, everything's gone. He expected an apology, some moment of remorse. It didn't come. My daughter's in medical school. I can't pay for it anymore. She'll have to drop out. She's worked so hard. His voice cracked. You have no idea what you've done. In that moment, Zora saw him. Even stripped of everything, he couldn't see past his suffering. He wasn't sorry for what he'd done. He was sorry he got caught. He wasn't apologizing for his bigotry. He was blaming her for its consequences. You're right, Captain, she said, with devastating calm. I have no idea, just like you had no idea who I was when you ordered me off your plane. You saw a threat, a problem to be removed. You didn't see a person. It seems you still don't. She turned and stepped into the elevator, doors closing on his shattered face. The settlement with Orajet was comprehensive. The airline was forced to dissolve its board, implement zero-tolerance discrimination policies, and overhaul its entire training program. The monetary settlement was substantial at figures, but Evelyn and Zora had no intention of keeping it. From the ordeal, a new purpose had been forged. They used the entire settlement to establish the Williams Reed Foundation for Equity in Aviation, providing scholarships, mentorships, and grants to young people from underrepresented communities who dreamed of careers in aviation. The foundation was Zora's answer to McGregor's hatred. His goal had been to keep someone like her out of his world. Her goal was to flood that world with people like her. It was the most elegant form of revenge. A year later, Zora was reviewing scholarship applications in her role on the selection committee. One application stopped her cold. The essay was powerful, detailing passion for medicine and devastating financial hardship due to her father's unexpected job loss and legal troubles. The applicant's name, Jessica McGregor. The irony was suffocating. Here was the daughter of the man whose bigotry had created this foundation, applying for a scholarship funded by the consequences of his actions. Zora could have dismissed it instantly. Perfect symmetrical revenge. Deny the daughter what the father had tried to deny her. But as she reread Jessica's essay, she saw not the sins of the father, but the fierce ambition of the daughter. Someone brilliant, struggling, on the verge of having her dreams extinguished by circumstances beyond her control. Rejecting her would be an act of prejudice, making a judgment based on her name, not her merit. It would mirror the very poison McGregor had injected into the world. With a steady hand, Zora placed a large checkmark next to Jessica McGregor's name. Weeks later, Alistair McGregor watched his daughter open an official envelope. "I got it," Jessica sobbed with relief. "Dad, I got it. The Soaring Spirit Scholarship covers everything. I can quit my night job." She hugged him. For the first time in over a year, he felt a flicker of light. "Who is the scholarship from?" he asked. Jessica beamed, reading the letterhead. "It's called the Williams Reed Foundation." The name hit him like a physical blow. Williams Reed. He took the letter, seeing the names, the mission statement about creating equity and opportunity. In that moment, the final crushing weight of his actions settled upon him. His daughter's dream, the one pure thing he had left, was being saved by the profound grace of the young woman he'd tried to destroy. This was the true karma, not the loss of his job or freedom, but this, the knowledge that he was indebted to her for the thing that mattered most. A debt he could never repay. A judgment more absolute than any court could deliver. Her victory wasn't in his ruin, but in her refusal to be ruined by him. She had taken the wreckage of his hatred and built a ladder for his daughter to climb. It was the humbling of a king, not by force, but by quiet grace that laid his soul completely bare. This is the story of how a single act of prejudice, aboard a routine flight, unraveled a man and an entire airline. It's a stark reminder that the world is smaller than we think, and the quietest person in the room might just be the most powerful. Alistair McGregor thought his cockpit was a kingdom. But Zora Williams taught him that true power isn't about control, about character. In the end, his hatred built his prison, while her grace built a future for others, including the daughter of her enemy. If this story resonated with you, if you believe in the power of karma and the strength of grace, please share it with someone who needs to hear it. Sometimes the most profound victories come not from revenge, but from refusing to let hatred win. Remember, character is not built in comfort, but in the moments when we choose grace over revenge, even when revenge would be justified. The strongest people are not those who show strength in front of us, but those who win battles we know nothing about.